From the Mercy One studio, Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Good morning, Bishop William Joensen here. Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. My sidekick, Kelly Mesher-Collins, is making a silent retreat, so that'll be an interesting test for her as she's filled with Easter joy and the Holy Spirit that He has risen. So we pray it's at an undisclosed location. So we're sending prayers her way that it'll be a spiritually fruitful time for her as well. Today we're visiting with Lori Chesser, attorney and chair of the Immigration Department at local law firm Davis Brown. We'll visit with her about immigration, the situation at the border, social justice, and more. But before we do that, let's just reflect kind of where we're at. Is this Easter octave on the cusp of the Feast of Divine Mercy, a great feast. Obviously, St. John Paul instituting it in the spirit of St. Faustina Kowalska. Very privileged in many years to the summer seminar in Krakow to celebrate at the shrine, at the altar, and to pray and invoke divine mercy upon the people in our lives. And so that very special time, there are celebrations going on throughout our parishes. We encourage people to participate in person or virtually. You can go to the Des Moines Diocese Facebook page to participate in live streams or to our website to see the schedule of events. Lots of things happening. Christ the King here in the Metro is one of the centers for that as well. And then what a difference a year makes of able to now finally go out to be a shepherd with his flock with the sacrament of confirmation and the young people that we give us such hope. And so we started up tonight with St. Thomas Aquinas in Indianola, then tomorrow St. Teresa, St. Joseph Winterset, Sunday St. Ambrose Cathedral, and then Saints Peter and Paul in Atlantic. So the sacred oil of chrism will be flowing freely throughout the diocese, and we consecrated that a couple of Fridays ago at St. Patrick's in Imogene as well. So great season of grace, and the many who were received in the church at the Easter Vigil, those who were baptized, those who received the made full communion with the church through the sacrament of confirmation and their first Holy Communion. We know that'll continue for many of our young people. So the sacramental spigot is wide open, if you will, and the Spirit is unchecked as it brings a new relationship and friendship in the hearts of so many of our young people. Certainly, Easter weekend, we saw many parishes were reporting an uptick in the number of people participating, still aiming for social distancing, but we removed some of the pew restrictions, which in some cases I think actually makes it easier to have that kind of social distancing among family units also. We're grateful as a new relationship commences today with the Sarah Clubs, the Sarah Club of Des Moines, the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. There are 12,500 Sarans operating in 48 countries. The spirit of Junipero Serra, his famous motto, always forward, never back, that Franciscan priest and missionary who lived in the 1700s and found many of the missions that we know in California. So in our diocese, the Sarah Club of Des Moines has 125 members, and Sarah Club of Council Bluffs about 30 members, and there are 5 in Nebraska with about 350 Sarans. So Spirit Catholic Radio helps us to make contact, and we appreciate the support that's flowing as they continue their charism of fostering priestly and religious vocations, to support and affirm existing priestly and religious vocations, and to all of us realize our own call to holiness along the way as well. So grateful to them for that. So in the spirit of Junipero Serra, we invoke some of his words, and anticipating the Feast of Divine Mercy, Archbishop Gomez of Los Angeles gathered some of his thoughts, his spiritual meditations and writings, and I just kind of pause for a spiritual moment here to share some of those with you. O Lord, you are complete mercy, complete love, and complete tenderness toward all men and women, even toward the most ungrateful sinners. You wish all people to attain the ends for which you compassionately created us. You yearn that we might believe that you are the way, the truth, and the life, and advance toward the salvation you will for us. Father of all mercy and consolation, pour forth the abundance of your love with mercy. By your mercy conquer every type of malice. Help us to leave not only our faults, but the bad habits and situations in our lives which lead to these faults, that we might love you alone. Remind us of your gentle goodwill, O Lord. May we never be severe or harsh. May we see in everyone a child whom you have created and redeemed with the most precious blood of your Son. Teach us to know what you value, kindness over love, and love, the best way to attract people to you. May we always help others to taste and see the sweetness and gentleness of your love. Jesus, we trust in you, And so we're grateful for this great grace. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll welcome local attorney Lori Chesser to talk about the situation at the border, immigration.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning provided by Bell Construction.
Bell Construction is a roofing company. They specialize in residential re-roofs like commercial jobs and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Bell Construction.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen, yours truly. Today we're visiting with Lori Chesser, attorney and chair of Immigration Department at local law firm Davis Brown. Many subjects we can engage her with. Lori, thank you for joining us this morning. Before we go any further with some of the topics in our country right now, we're grateful to you and the relationship you've had. Sister Jude Fitzpatrick, who oversees administrative services and works with you, I believe, to help usher in our international priests, to help them with their international status and their status, the immigration status here in the country. What are some of the challenges you face with that, just as priests? You're doing a good job because we're joined by about 20 such priests in our diocese.
Well, thank you, Bishop Joensen. I'm so pleased to be here, and I'm so happy to be able to work with the diocese on those efforts. But yeah, I think anything we do with immigration, there's always the it's a bureaucratic administrative process, and it's affected by world events and by politics. And so, every person who immigrates goes through some level of hassle, I would say, and some things that are outside their control, like the pandemic, closing consulates, and so I would say our priests who are coming to serve us definitely deserve to for people to understand that they've gone through a long journey to come and help us.
And their patience and persistence, but you've been a great asset to them and to us all. So we're grateful to you in the Diocese of Des Moines. And we're citizens of the city of God, but also the city of man as well. And so we have to honor that at the same time. A lot happening with the influx of immigrants. We've been seeing some of the news reports there. Some of the stories are sad and alarming, drownings and the so-called coyotes dropping small children over the border wall. What's your take on the present situation?
Well, it is a terribly tragic situation, and it certainly isn't new. This has been going on throughout. This is, I think, the third administration that has faced this situation. I think it's really important for people to dig into the issue a little bit and understand the context of it. We're really talking about refugees, and I think, just stepping back broadly, there's always refugees everywhere in the world, people seeking to leave their country because the conditions are, they're unable to live in their country for different conditions. And so just to give some, you hear the numbers and they sound crazy, but just to give some context, Lebanon, which is a country of about 6 million people, has, as of last year, resettled 1.5 million refugees from Syria.
My goodness.
So, we're talking about, the numbers sound scary at the border, but when you're talking about a country of 300 million people and a few thousand refugees from Central America, that puts it in a little context. But basically, what we call the Northern Triangle of Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, have unfortunately been unable to control the gangs which are created by the drug traffic that basically is headed to the U.S. And so, we unfortunately...
Which flows through those countries from South America then?
I can't admit to being an expert on the drug trade, but basically, the drug trade does, that is what's driving the drugs for guns kind of exchange that happens between the U.S. and its southern neighbors, which is very sad. And a lot of those gangs were created when young men were deported from the U.S. For gang membership, back several years ago, and so now they have gang membership there. And the government has been unable to control them. In some of the countries, there's corruption. They haven't adopted good police practices for various reasons. And so the people in a certain, social economic class are faced with the choice that either if they have boys and the boys are recruited to the gangs, they either join or they die. The girls have a similar fate if they're identified to be a girlfriend of the gang. They either do that or die, or there's other consequences that are quite
And are we talking
tragic.
Teenagers or even 10-year-olds, or how old are we talking?
Very young children often. As they enter into puberty, that's not a good thing, because then they would, catch the attention of the gangs potentially. Mm-hmm. And they cannot go to the police because the police are often complicit. So they really have no protection, or, they'll torture their mother, or they'll torture their grandmother, or, it's too horrific really to spend much time thinking about it. It's very, very disturbing. So, one of the few choices they have is to flee. And we have, of course, an asylum law in the U.S. that says anyone appearing at the border of the United States has a chance to state a claim for asylum. And so that's really what's happening. Now, the reason that unaccompanied minors are coming is that the claims for asylum are either not being considered or being denied, which some are not asylum, so that's fine. But but if the children come by themselves, there's a different protocol for putting them into the custody of Department of Health and Human Services, and their claim will still be considered. It's not like they're given a free pass to stay. It's just that they're handled in a different way and have some safety, at least for some period of time.
Am I right to understand that the law had shifted, or the executive policies had changed about where they were going to wait as they were under that kind of asylum petition, whether it was in the Mexican side or the U.S. side of the border?
Yeah, well, I don't think the law changed, but the policy definitely changed. The Trump administration found a way to interpret the law that said they did not have to allow them to enter the U.S., but instead have them remain in Mexico. And it basically relied on the refugees themselves to establish a waiting line that they kept track of for them to, they took so many people a day to state their claim for asylum. And that is what the Biden administration stopped, because it really is contrary to what the law holds. I actually know an attorney who quit the Immigration Service because she was asked to write that memo that said that was okay. Mm-hmm. So that's where it was a very controversial thing. So that's what
talk
was
about a conscience
away.
Clause then for her. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what changed. And so while the border enforcement has remained the same, the borders are, if the borders were open, we wouldn't be talking about this, because we wouldn't have people being held in facilities at the border, mm-hmm. If the border was open. So the border's not open, but that policy has shifted. And I think one thing people need to remember also is, you mentioned coyotes, which is kind of the slang term for these human smugglers that bring people, and that's their business. Mm-hmm. And so, they view changes in administration or changes in policies as sort of a business opportunity, and they say, oh, you can get in now, you should try it now. And, of course, they're getting paid thousands of dollars to take these trips.
Not exactly truth in advertising there. So, but,
right.
Yeah. It would strike me that it would be very hard to verify, the conditions whereby one is petitioning for asylum. If you're from Honduras and you're in at the border of the United States, are they really going to be able to track that and go back on that? And then, of course, as you've noted in your Marr interview a couple years ago, U.S. Border Patrol also works the southern border of Mexico to prevent immigrants from coming from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, right, to make it all the way to the United States. Is that something that's still happening? And what about the verification of, and the determination on whether it's valid asylum or not?
Well, it's a good question. So I'm not absolutely sure where that stands, but we certainly have agreements with Mexico about enforcement. We have, our internet. It points to the importance of our international relations and how we're managing this situation and what we can do to alleviate it. But to your point, basically all kinds of asylum in the U.S. are mostly based on reports of country conditions from the UN and other agencies, newspaper reports, and people know that this situation exists. Then what the immigration judges are supposed to do is assess the credibility of the testimony of the people who are before them. And there is a law about what constitutes a valid claim for asylum, so not everything does. Poverty is not a great claim for asylum. You have to be part of an articulated social group, or it has to be because of political opinion or your religion. There are rules around that, and so that's also an area that changes based on the administration about how that is being interpreted. But yeah, that's really, no matter who's claiming asylum where, documentation is hard to achieve, but the judges are trained and probably need to be trained more, but are trained to assess the credibility of a fear.
Okay, and you speak of the religion criterion there. Most of us would assume these countries are largely Christian, if not all Catholic, to a vast majority. But there are religious reasons that might figure in all of this. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if the religion is a basis in these countries of people coming here. In other, these are not the only refugees that we do resettle, and of course in other countries, various. There's persecution of religions. This one really isn't so much that. It's mostly based on the inability of the governments to control the gangs and identifying these people as targets of that. Also, domestic violence or other violence against women is a huge problem in these countries. And so, that's what we're mostly talking about there.
Versus someplace like South Sudan, where the Muslim-Christian antagonism is still simmering very acutely in that way. So my one trip to Honduras with some students about 5 years ago during Holy Week, if you imagine between Des Moines and, say, Mason City or Kansas City, there would have been at least 5 or 6 armed checkpoints along the main highway. And so, the specter under which these people live and the specter of violence is very acute and real. So, I think that's when one is able to be there, one senses now this is a very different place, and the rule of law is a very elusive thing for people. So that's in that way. Parents. Kind of an act of desperation to send the children on their own, or are they ideally they would accompany their children and make a joint petition, or could you just describe that mindset? I think you've kind of touched on it, but is there any way to unfold any other features of this?
Yeah, I think it's hard when we see these pictures and without context, it's hard to imagine doing that doing that with your children, of sending them on this journey by themselves. Now, families certainly come together, and if you recall, a few years ago, families were coming together and then being separated at the border. But now that has stopped. But the families sometimes come and are not able to. Their claim is denied, and then, we'll say, well, okay, we at least want to try to save a child or some children, so, send them across the border by themselves. Or sometimes the children, of course, are coming with a relative or with another group to come to the border. And it's hard to imagine, I think if you think about maybe being in a boat that's sinking and you only have so many seats in the life raft, you're going to put your children in the life raft even though there's potentially sharks in the water, but it's their best chance, And so I think we have to try to put ourselves in their situation. But I have to say, the way to solve this is, of course, not at the border. The way to solve it is in the country, and that is something that the Biden administration is focused on and has asked Congress for funds to have for programs to try to help those countries get the gang violence under control, anti-corruption efforts, and those were starting to make some headway in the Obama administration, but were cut off So we have, I think that we have, we don't live in a bubble. We, they're our neighbors, and we have to help them get the situation under control. So, we do want to give asylum, but most people don't want to leave. They'd rather stay in their home country if they could.
That's something we sometimes lose sight of, really. I mean, I think in that way. But, so, and in the process of that kind of transformation, there will probably be both civil and religious martyrs made, in trying to overcome that gang violence, because evil pushes back in a most horrific way. May I assume you're bilingual, or is that,
I wish I was bilingual. No. No, actually, we do have people in our office who speak Spanish, but most of my work, in fact, has to do with more what I'm doing for the diocese with priests or with employees of companies or family members. We're not at the border, so that is not the kind of claims that we get here, although certainly people, are resettled here in Iowa or come here as a secondary destination. So we do have quite a few Spanish-speaking clients, but unfortunately I'm not the one that helps them on
that. We're about a minute before the break, and I hope you'll stay with us, Lori, past the break for some further engagement. But just, as someone who might come to you, or whether mediated with a translator or something, what kind of counsel do you offer to undocumented immigrants who come in search of a better life, and how does that unfold, that dynamic?
Well, it's one of the big misunderstandings I think most people have about our immigration law. I'll often talk to people who will say, well, I'm trying to do it the right way, or my employee's trying to do it the right way. Maybe they should have just walked across the border, And what really happens when you walk across the border is that you are then really barred from almost all kinds of, unless you, of course, obtain asylum, unless you have a claim as a refugee.
Okay, Lori, we'll pause there, and we'll go to a break, and we'll rejoin you in a few minutes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
This is Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr from the Uncommon Good.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Marr Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Marr Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Marr Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Okay, we're back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio and Spirit Catholic Radio Network, sponsored by the Sarah Clubs of Des Moines and Council Bluffs. Lori Chesser, our attorney guest today, and we were reflecting upon, the trying to do things the right way, but the disincentive there is, and that some people tempted to say, why didn't I just walk across the border? So continue, Counselor, with what you're...
Sure.
Is the meter running for me here? I don't
know. No, this is free, pro bono.
You can count this as part of your tithing.
That's right. There we go. Exactly. So I think the people who come and do walk across the border, or who come legally and then overstay, are barred from almost all kinds of immigration. There's a few minor exceptions, but that's where unless the law changes, there's little that can be done. Now, there are certainly, the immigration law is very complex, so I would not want anyone to listen to this and say, oh, then I have no chance and I should never, consult a lawyer. That's not true, because, there are things that sometimes can be done in a certain situation, but policy-wise, most people are in a box where there's really nothing they can do to regularize their status. And those are some of the hardest calls I get, particularly, before DACA, before the Deferred Action for Child Arrivals. I would get these calls from children who had turned, 18 or 21. They're like, I'm ready to legalize now. I found out that I'm not here legally. What do? I want to follow the law. And, I had to tell them there's nothing I can do for you. and those were hard calls. But we do have some things like DACA that now at least allow children in certain situations people who were brought here as children, to get a work permit and register that they're here. They don't get any legal status. They don't get any, federal aid. They don't get scholarships unless they're privately funded, but they at least they can work and be productive members of society without having to use a false Social Security number or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You make reference to the Dreamers, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and so right now, and we were looking at last fall and the potential change in executive policy, the intervention of the Supreme Court as well on that front. Is this something that's going to continue to have an executive solution, or would we look for a legislative one?
Well, I'm certainly hoping for a legislative one. The House of Representatives has already passed the Dream and Promise Act, which is basically the DREAM Act, but also includes, so for the children people who were brought here as children, with certain conditions, of course, and then people who have now temporary protected status from some other countries are included in that, but basically it would be a legalization under certain terms, and then, eventually allow people to apply for permanent residence and citizenship. So that now will go to the Senate. And if the Senate would pass that, we could finally have a solution. The DREAM Act, I think, was first introduced in either 2000 or 2001. So it would be nice to see a legislative solution.
Really, a whole generation, really, that's been under that rubric. Yeah.
Yes.
And as you say, it's not just simply you're legal by fiat. You still have to enter the process, right? I mean, you have to for naturalization. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There is a process. There's waiting times. There's criminal background checks. There's, our immigration. I mean, one reason I have a job is that the immigration system is complex, and we have a lot of safeguards in many, many different ways to screen people who are coming here or who are here asking for permanent residence or citizenship. So, yeah, it's just the start of a journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some dioceses employ immigration attorneys as part of their overall ministries operating through the diocese, Catholic Charities or otherwise. But you're really kind of an extension of our whole Catholic mission in some way, even as you're in private practice as well. What would be and with 45 seconds left, your last kind of counsel as a woman of faith to people who say, we want to respect the rule of law, we'd like to see some resolution to this. What would be our attitudes? What value notes would we want to hit?
Well, I think it's important.
We got 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, it's important to look at. I think what the Pope says in Fratelli Tutti is really a great place to start. These people are neighbors. We need to treat our neighbors with love, and we need to figure out what is love in that situation. And in many situations, love can be tough love, but we need to enter into their reality. And we also have to realize that, we always will have neighbors, and we're part of that neighborhood. Here we need to think about
that. A good Easter message for us. Thank you, Lori Chester, on Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thanks for all our listeners in Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa Catholic Radio, and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.